Welcome to Take a Breath, a podcast for creating practical calm in the messy middle of midlife. I'm Polly, and this is your space to pause. Because life in midlife is full on, between work, family, menopause, and the mental load, your nervous system can easily end up in constant overdrive, leaving you feeling exhausted, reactive, and overwhelmed by even the smallest things. Each week, I'll share my own tools alongside honest conversations and practical nervous system support to help you create more calm, peace, joy, and inner steadiness, not by escaping your life, because that's totally unrealistic, but by meeting it differently. So whenever you're ready, let's take a breath in through the nose. Feel your belly rise, your ribs expand, and as you exhale, let's begin. Hello, and welcome back to Take a Breath. Oh, it feels strange saying this new title, but actually it does feel really good and so much more aligned with everything that I now do. So today I want to talk about something which I know so many of you know only too well, and that is the emotional load of midlife. And I'm going to share with you 5 tools that I know have really helped me with this and have really helped me ease that midlife emotional load. Because midlife busy is different to everybody else's busy, because on top of the usual stress load, we have perimenopause and menopause to navigate at a time when we're spinning more plates than ever before. Often we are at the top of our careers. We're very much the sandwich generation in that we've got kids probably still at home or on their way out of home. We've got aging parents, we've looking after our homes, finances, all of it. And we're often pushing ourselves to keep going in the same way that we did in our 20s and our 30s, even though our bodies, our brains, and our hormones are just playing a completely different game at the moment. So that is what we're really going to be talking about today, because some things unfortunately do remain the same, because women today are still far more likely to carry the emotional and unpaid labor of life. And I hate to say it, but it is true. So things like running the house, remembering birthdays, sending cards, organising Christmas, managing the social calendar, keeping all the family connections alive and happy, holding the entire ecosystem of school, of emotions, of schedules, and of course our children's well-being as well. It really does fall mainly on us women. Not in all cases, I know that's a big generalisation, but generally it does. So it's no real surprise that far too often we come last. I find sometimes, I don't know if this is you as well, once, I really need to have a wee, but I don't go to the loo when I need to because I'm just rushing through another task. Or I forget to drink water when really I know how important it is to drink water, or I skip a meal. I mean, lunch is something which for so long I used to skip. I don't anymore. So what we tend to do is we push through instead of giving ourselves some much needed time and space. All of this really does matter, because chronic stress, and that is stress which is constant, impacts every system in the body, including our hormones, which obviously affects how we experience menopause and perimenopause. It impacts our nervous system, our mood, our sleep, and our sense of self and our well-being. And then if you add to that the reality that many women now, as I said, have children at home, because many of us are having children later on in life, which means that perimenopause often coincides with children at home or teenagers. Often a lot of us have mortgages based on 2 incomes, and it's just a lot. And then you add into that all the technology that keeps us switched on forever. It's a lot, and it really can take its toll. And the thing is, most of us and most of the women I work with, then they're actually holding it together pretty well on the outside. They don't look like they're falling apart on the outside. They're coping, they're functioning, they're holding it together. Okay, they may be a bit snappy and tired, but inside, they're exhausted, they're overwhelmed. They might feel disconnected from themselves or from the world, so they feel a little bit lonely. And just kind of wondering, if this is just how it is now. And this was very, very much me for a good few years. I honestly thought, and this is probably me sort of early to mid 40s, I honestly thought I had it all together. I mean, now I'm in my early 50s, but at that point, life was super busy. I was really just surviving. I was just getting through the day, just about. I definitely was not thriving, but I was managing. But it was for me when perimenopause really arrived with a great big force that the cracks really started to show. And that is what often happens. We can hold it together until something gives. For me, it was perimenopause, as it is for very many women. So I, at this time, and for most of my life, was constantly living up in my head. I was snappy, particularly with the people I loved the most. I was riddled with self-doubt, self-criticism. My confidence was super low. I felt resentful because I felt like I was having to do everything. And I did have this real deep sense of aloneness that I just couldn't quite explain. And what makes me really sad now is knowing all of this and recognizing this is that I just didn't have the tools back then that thankfully I have now. So these tools which I have now would have made life so much easier, not just for me, they definitely would have for me, but also, oh my goodness, my family would have been so grateful as well. They would have had a much, much nicer version of me. However, the good news is these tools are learnable. They are pretty simple and they work with you and your nervous system. And that is what I want to share. So I'm going to share 5 practical ways to ease the midlife emotional load. So I've really thought about which ones have been the most effective for me. They're simple, they are practices, so they are things which you need to keep working on, but they really do make a big difference. However, they're not huge, great shifts you have to make in your life. They're just small shifts that do make a difference. So the first one of these is starting your day intentionally. Now, this was a big one for me. And before your brain goes, what? Hold on, I don't have time for anything else in my mornings. I'm already super busy. Seriously, just hear me out. I'm talking 5 minutes, which I'm absolutely sure you can carve out. So just a few minutes in the morning to settle your nervous system, to come into your body, to remember the brilliant person that you are and how you want to show up in the day is so powerful. Before the world and everybody else starts kind of taking and requiring your time, it really is about deciding what is the energy that you want to bring into the day. And it's not about having a perfect routine, it's about priming your nervous system before all the demands begin. So when you wake up, your cortisol, your stress hormone, that naturally rises. That's normal, that's healthy. But if the first thing you do is to check your phone, your emails, your messages, and then you start to panic about everything you've got going on, and you start going through your mental to-do list and you start then rushing because you're already behind schedule, obviously you're going to spike your stress hormones further, and it puts you into that real kind of reactive state before the day's even started. So your nervous system is already on the back foot. But when you take just a few minutes to pause, to breathe, and create even a tiny pocket of calm, and set your intentions of how you want to show up in the day, you set the tone for how you move through the rest of the day. You take that energy with you. I wonder if you've ever noticed, I certainly have, that when you're rushing and you're irritated first thing in the morning, that's when things often go wrong. It's when you stub your toe or you spill something on your clean top, or you just go around sort of bumbling and crashing into things. You're in that energy. And because everything is energy and everything is vibration, so that's why annoying things continue to happen through the day. Whereas when you're calm and you're not rushing, that definitely makes for a much better day because you're in that energy. So that is one of the reasons I created my membership, The Inner Space, because I really believe that we, us midlife women, need a place to land, to breathe, to reconnect first thing in the morning, to set your intention, to decide how you're going to show up in the day. So the women who show up, I do sessions 3 times a week. They're 20 minutes, really do start on a really positive, chilled out note. And they all feed back and say that it really does make a big difference. Now, I know that might well feel far too much for you right now. You can't give 20 minutes of your time. So I have created a free 5-minute morning practice, which gives you a little taster of how powerful doing this can actually be. So if you want to download that, just go to my website. You can go to the resource library and you will find it there. It's super simple. It's to music and it is literally 5 minutes long. I mean, it's 5 minutes isn't going to fix your whole life, but it absolutely can change the quality of your day. I will only ever recommend brands that I know, love, and use myself. And one of those is Ancient and Brave. Honestly, they've become part of my daily habits. The very first thing I do every morning is pour myself a big glass of water with their True Hydration in it. It feels like such a simple ritual, but it really sets me up for the day. And I know I'm properly rehydrating with their blend of electrolytes and minerals, especially before I exercise, which I always do in the morning. Then later on, when I make my coffee, I stir in their True Collagen powder into the coffee. Now, it blends in straight away, no fuss, there's no taste, and collagen is something we naturally lose as we age, but it's so important for our skin, joints, and overall vitality. Now, I'll be honest, Ancient and Brave may cost a little more than some of the tubs you'll spot on supermarket shelves, but the difference is you're getting the highest quality ingredients, sourced with integrity and tested to a higher standard, and absolutely no nasties added. That's why I trust them and why I think they're worth every penny. And because I want you to be able to try them out for yourself, I've got a special offer for you. As a listener of this podcast, you can get 20% off your very first order. All you need to do is click the link in the show notes and pop in the code POLYW20 at checkout. They've got more than just collagen and hydration too. They've got creatine, they've got blends, supplements. So it's a perfect chance to explore their range and make the most of that 20% off. My second way to help ease the midlife emotional load is gratitude. Now, I know you've heard this before, but just stick with me. Gratitude isn't about ignoring the hard stuff and pretending everything's okay, because I know that's just not feasible when life feels busy and hectic and hard. What gratitude is about, and it is quite scientific, it's about training your brain to widen its lens and to remind your nervous system that not everything is wrong. So we all have something called the reticular activating system, or I'm going to say RAS because it's much easier to say. And our RAS's job is very simple, but also it's very important. It basically decides what gets your attention and what gets filtered out. Because if your brain tried to consciously process everything around you all day long, you'd be completely overwhelmed. So think of the RAS as a gatekeeper. Basically, it's asking, right, what's relevant? What's important? What can I let in? Or actually, what actually might be a threat? What do I need to keep out of the mind? And from an evolutionary point of view, this really does make total sense because our brains evolved to keep us alive, not happy, but to keep us alive, to survive. And thousands of years ago, noticing danger, whether it was a predator or a hostile tribe, or whether it was a lack of food, that was all far more important than noticing a beautiful sunrise or just a really beautiful moment of calm. So the brain has developed what we now call a negativity bias. We are wired to notice what's wrong more easily than what's right. Our systems haven't updated since all those years ago. So when you're really stressed and in that survival mode, that bias becomes even stronger. So the stress tells your brain, stay alert, scan for all the problems, be careful, something might go wrong. We are always in that state of hypervigilance. So the RAS basically just starts filtering the world accordingly. So instead of noticing all the positivity, say, for example, the positive comments or feedback you might get throughout the day, you'll start to notice and focus on all the negative. Even if it's just one slightly small negative thing, that is what you're going to focus on. Even if you've got so much done, you'll focus on the one small thing you didn't get done or the comment that triggered you, even though everything else, was okay. So it's not pessimism, it's physiology. Our brain is designed at the moment, it hasn't been updated, to think like that, to find the negativity. It's got that bias. So gratitude is important because actually it's a really fantastic way of retraining your RAS. So when you practice gratitude, you're not pretending that everything is perfect. What you're doing is you're giving your RAS new instructions. So you're saying to your RAS, right, okay, this is important too. This is safe. I'm allowed to notice this and I want to notice more of that. So even something as simple as acknowledging, and something which I really do in the mornings because I love it so much, is a warm, cozy bed, or being really grateful for your health. We're only grateful for our health when it's taken away. So at the moment, I've hurt my knee. I've got a ruptured ACL in my knee. It's really limiting my mobility. And my goodness, I am so grateful for when my body was healthy. And I'm also grateful that my body is healthy and know that it will heal. But gosh, I wished I was more grateful for my body when I had two working legs. So whatever it might be, something simple is all it needs. And when we focus on these simple moments of gratitude, what happens is we start to gently shift what our brains are scanning for. And over time, the RAS becomes much more efficient at spotting these little moments of joy, of gratitude, rather than focusing on everything that is hard and miserable and doom and gloom. This is not instead of the hard stuff. This is alongside it. And that's the key difference. Also, just to note as well that gratitude really does help to soften our inner critic, our ego, our monkey mind, whatever you want to call it, because your inner critic, often they're very harsh, they tend to run through neural pathways that are associated with threat, with judgment, and self protection. Whereas gratitude activates completely different networks. So ones that are linked to connection, to perspective, to emotional regulation. So very simply, your brain can't fully run both programs at the same time. So when gratitude is present, the volume of the inner critic messages, they naturally turn down. It's pretty much impossible for both the inner critic and for gratitude to coexist. So gratitude really is really super helpful. And obviously, this matters even more in midlife because, as we know, perimenopause and menopause, they already make your nervous system much more sensitive. So, when our hormones are fluctuating, the brain becomes more reactive to stress, more prone to threat based thinking. And so, gratitude really is something to think about, perhaps less about positive thinking and maybe more about nervous system support. And basically, over time, your brain becomes so much more efficient at noticing what's working, what's going well, rather than just what's not going well and what's wrong. So, all we need to do here is just focus on some of the things in your life which you are truly grateful for. Start in the morning, start by taking a breath, the fact that you have a breath. Start by noticing your warm, snuggly bed. Really enjoy your first cup of tea, whatever it is for you. It's just little moments. All right, let's move on to my third way. This is one which is very powerful. It's work in progress, this one, still for me as well. All of these are still very much work in progress for me, and I do them consistently. This one is about language because the language you use matters much more than you realize. So this is shifting from I have to I get to. So if we are saying things like, I have to exercise, or I have to go and do the shopping, I have to do the laundry, etc., that is signaling to yourself a lack of control. And lack of control basically increases your stress, it increases tension in the body, and it can also just make you feel really rubbish about everything because you feel like you've just got this massive list and you haven't got a choice about it. Your brain interprets it as even more pressure. But when you shift to I get to, you're introducing choice and agency. And that very small reframe can massively reduce your perceived stress, and it can really soften your body's responses, even when you've still got to do the task. So this isn't obviously about saying that you've got to do less, because that's often what we're told, but it's very unrealistic when you've got a heap of stuff you've got to get done. So this is more about reminding your system that you're not trapped, that you do have options, although you probably are still going to get it done. It's just a different way of doing it. And this alone can really ease that emotional load quite dramatically. So, for example, let's say, okay, let's think about exercise. So instead of saying, oh my God, I have to exercise, I've got to just, tick it off my list. Really, why don't you just reframe that to yourself? I get to move my body. I get to make it stronger. My goodness, at the moment, I am missing exercise so much because I can't do it. So it's like, yeah, I get to do this. This is really good. What about cooking? So this is something I've always found quite a chore, particularly when you're cooking for a family and lots of people have got different tastes. So instead of I have to cook every day for my family, maybe try, I get to cook for my family and I get to create memories. I get to care for them. I get to care for the people I love, rather than, I have to deal with everyone else's needs. So again, it's not about pretending everything is rainbows and unicorns. It's about shifting from obligation to agency, and that really does make a difference. Okay, my fourth one is about building inner awareness. Now, that I talk about this a lot, particularly on my Thursday Thoughts with Lucy. This is huge, and honestly, it changes everything and has been probably the biggest game changer for me. For most of my life, I was living on autopilot, doing all the things, ticking all the boxes, living my life by default, going through the motions. And when you, though, start to build your inner awareness, you start just to notice what's going on in your inner world. And your inner world shapes everything. It shapes your outer experience of life. Because if your inner world is rushed and resentful and chaotic, life will feel hard. But when your inner world becomes calmer and more present and just everything a little bit softer, everything starts to feel lighter. Most of us are not stressed because of what's happening. We're stressed because of what we're thinking about what's happening. So let me just say that again. We're not stressed because of what's happening. We're stressed because of what we're thinking about what's happening. It's that thinking mind again. So much of our day is run by unconscious patterns, habitual thought loops going on again and again through our minds. And without awareness, your brain just defaults to repetition. So these thoughts just go again and again and again. It's not actually focusing on what is actually happening. So when you build awareness, what you're doing is you're creating space between the thought that you're having and your identity. You stop being inside of the thought and letting that thought be your identity. And instead, what you're doing is you're observing it. It's subtle, but it's such a massive difference. So what you're doing is you're engaging a part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is the part which is responsible for things like perspective, for conscious choice. And so that is why simply noticing a thought can reduce its intensity. I mean, it's as simple as that. Becoming conscious and present is probably one of the most powerful things I have done and has just made me a nicer person, a happier person, a calmer person. So you're probably wondering, okay, great, right, how do I do it? What do I do? I just can't switch my mind off. Well, how I started and what I recommend to everybody is a really simple way to practice this is to set an alarm on your phone, which goes off at regular intervals in the day, or this could include having post-its on your desk or around the place, basically having reminders in your day to remind you to pause and check in and ask yourself, where are my thoughts right now? So to literally step into your mind and notice, okay, what am I thinking? Am I ruminating? Am I judging myself, which so often we do? Am I doubting myself? Am I judging someone else? Am I worrying about something I've done in the past? Or am I worrying about something that's about to happen in the future? It's just noticing, what are you thinking? Now, the goal, it's not to stop the thoughts, it's to notice them, to become the witness rather than being completely swept away by them. That is what we're talking about here. So it is a skill, it does take practice, and it's something that you just have to keep coming back to again and again. And it's something which I constantly am coming back to again and again, but it is also completely life-changing. And this is literally what I teach in all my offers. It's what my coaching helps you to do. And it is something which I feel everyone, I just wish we were taught this stuff in schools because it is so powerful. It's about stepping out of your thoughts because you are not your thoughts. It's about becoming aware of them. And then when we can do that, just the emotional load eases because you're in the present moment. And that is everything. I'm definitely going to be talking more about this on this podcast. But yes, that's my number 4. Now, that sort of moves then nicely into my final way to help ease the emotional load. And that is about learning how to shift your state quickly. because when your thoughts are spiraling, what happens is it then impacts your body. So your body tends to tense. And when your body's tense, what happens is your thoughts start to ramp up. It's a loop that you get stuck into. So this is why trying to think your way out of negative thinking, it really rarely works. So many of us try to solve stress with more thinking. We sort of analyze what we're thinking, we replay it, we try to sort everything out in our heads. But in my experience, it doesn't work. And the reason for that is super simple, because when you're stressed, you're not operating from the part of the brain, that prefrontal cortex, that does the calm, logical, balanced thinking. Because when your nervous system perceives that threat, and that obviously doesn't have to be a tiger, it can be an email, an argument, your own inner critic in your mind, your body moves into that protective state. So your stress hormones rise, your heart rate increases. That's when you get the sweaty palms, your everything tenses, your muscles tense, your breathing becomes faster and shallower. That whole shift is basically designed to help you act, take action, not to reflect. So it's very hard to think at that time. Your brain is prioritizing the survival circuits. So your prefrontal cortex basically becomes less available. And that means that your perspective, your reasoning, your impulse control, which I'm sure we have all experienced when that impulse control leaves us, our decision making, it all goes out the window. So that's why when you're triggered and you're snapping and you're saying things that you really know you shouldn't, that's happening because that part of the brain is basically not online. That's why you're being irrational, but you still feel like you can't really do anything about it. You still feel completely hijacked by the moment. However, because your body and brain are in a constant two-way communication, one of the most direct ways that you can influence that conversation going on between your body and brain is your breath. Now, breathing is super special because it's both automatic, so it happens without you thinking about it, but it's also controllable, so you can change it consciously. There's virtually no other function in the body apart from blinking, I think, which works in that way. So it's like having a remote control for your nervous system in your pocket. So when you're stressed, as I've mentioned earlier, breathing becomes faster, shallower, it's higher up in your chest, it's more irregular. You might hold your breath. So especially if you're concentrating or you're emotionally triggered, there's actually something known as email apnea, when people might hold their breath just before they send an email and then they send it. So I don't know if you've noticed that sometimes you might be holding your breath when you're feeling a little bit stressed. But what happens is that this pattern of breathing starts to reinforce your stress loop, because it keeps your body in that sort of mobilized, ready for action state. Your brain reads your breathing pattern and assumes, right, okay, I must be under threat. Let me prepare. So when you deliberately slow your breath, especially when you lengthen the exhale, you activate calming pathways in your nervous system. You're essentially telling the brain, okay, everything's okay, I'm safe, we can relax now. And that message can really lower the intensity of the stress response that you're in. It helps your prefrontal cortex come back online, which then obviously makes it very easier to start responding in the way that you want to. So you can choose your response rather than fly off the handle and react in a way that perhaps later on you're going to regret. So I like to think of it like this. When my system's really activated, I'm trying to solve life from the fire alarm part of my brain. But when I take some slow breaths, what I'm doing is I'm switching that fire alarm off, or at least turning it right down, so that my wiser, my calmer part of me can come back online. Now, there are many different ways that you can shift your state for these moments. And I think I'll do a whole episode on them, because I do think it would be useful. But really, to keep it super simple for now, just focus on some slow breaths. Extending your exhale will really shift your state. So breathing in through the nose, you let your belly rise, your ribs expand, and then a slow breath out. Now, that breath out can either be slow breath out through the mouth or through the nose, whichever one feels better for you in that moment. And that is really when everything does feel a little bit easier. You feel less trapped by your thoughts. You can make better decisions. You start to finally gain a little bit more perspective. And that inner critic really starts to quieten. So this really does change how you experience life. So give it a go. It really is helpful. And if you want a toolkit, a rapid calm toolkit, I created one for exactly these moments. So it's called the Rapid Calm Toolkit, because in the moment you need something quick. So these are, I've got 5 different breaths, which are only 2 minutes each. So it's like giving you a 2-minute reset. And there's a breath for when you feel overwhelmed. There's one for when you're ruminating and that inner critic is on full flow and you're really beating yourself up. There's one for kind of anxiety and panic. There's one for when you're feeling like, really rushed and you're like running out of time. And one for when you're really stuck in your head and can't switch off. It's a bit like a nervous system toolkit, but super tiny and really effective. So you can go and head over to my website, again, in the resource library section, and it's £17 for the 5 audios. So there you have it. Those are my 5 ways of easing that emotional and mental load at midlife. Midlife asks more of us than ever before, and we really do deserve tools that support us. You don't have to obviously do all 5 of these. Just start with one that you feel might make a big difference for you. See how it goes, and then you can build on it. They are super simple tools, and they do need practice, but they are so effective, and I really do hope that you'll give them a go. And if you do, please, please, please feedback to me. I would absolutely love to hear how they are working for you. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it, and I cannot wait to speak to you on the next episode of Take a Breath. Take care. Lots of love. Bye. Before you go, just to let you know that you'll find a selection of gentle, practical offers at really accessible prices over on my website. Just go to pollywarren.com. They're all designed to support your everyday breathing, to ease anxiety, and help you build a more resilient, flexible nervous system so you can feel calmer and bring a little more steadiness into your daily life. Everything I share is designed to meet you where you are and to fit into real busy lives. Just go to pollywarren.com and click on the resource library. If you'd like to stay connected between episodes, you can also find me over on Instagram at Polly Warren Coaching. This is where I share simple reminders and tools and reflections to help you come back to calm throughout the week. And if you're enjoying Take a Breath, it would mean so much if you could take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really does help this podcast reach more women who might need a little space to breathe too. Thank you so much for being here and for taking this time for yourself. And remember, sometimes all you need to do is take a breath.